Let me take a moment to recognize our new members. I know Kent Hooper's here. He just joined. Last month we had Diane Wonicky. Yes, indeed. Here's a slide with some of the names, but we've had some here in November. Vanessa Pintado was a speaker recently, and Carrie Gordon, August Harper. Thank you all for being here. I also want to take a moment. This is a real pleasure to salute Bob McKimmon and Margaret too. I'm pleased indeed to say that thanks to funds donated in Bob's honor, the archive of our well-regarded journal, The Caxtonian, has its own website. Go to caxtonian.org. And take a look. I've been enjoying exploring the annals of our club's history. And I want to recognize and thank this evening's benefactor, my friend Jackie Vossler, for her efforts in bringing this evening program together. She also serves as our grants committee chair. So that's it for me. Let me hand it over to her to talk about this year's recipients. Thank you.
Well, this is going to be sweet but crisp. Since 2002, the Caxton Club has been giving book artists grants. And we've been very perseverant in doing that. And to date, we have given $134,000. And that is a remarkable number because this is a remarkable club. This year, our club and our committee was able to do the following. We awarded 4 grant recipients, and I'm going to allow the slide to come up about that. We had 4 grant recipients. And the way we do these is we do this both for undergraduate and for graduate work. These are the names of our winners. And most of these winners, we have the distinct pleasure of having in our room tonight. And so to honor them, what I would like to do on behalf of the Grants Committee, which I chair, and which is also has its own members, most of whom are here tonight, Hannah Batzel, and maybe Hannah can wave, Martha Chiplis, Audrey Neffenegger, Ken Greaves, Eileen Madden, Diane Stillwell Weinberg, and I know Diane is here, and she should also wave to us, and myself. None of this would be possible without all of us. And so I want to give the certificates tonight to our recipients, and if they'll come forward, they'll receive some documents to honor this night and their check, which ought to be a happy moment in time. So the first person I'd like to honor is Chloe Yakum Ba, who is the Vossler Prize winner. So if you'll come forward. Dylan Schaff, who's one of our undergraduate recipients. And the next person I want to see if they are here is Lily Pennock. Lily, are you in the room? Nope, I guess she didn't make it, so I'm really sorry about that. But the other winners are Lily Pennock and Pajuma Prasanna, who is from the University of Iowa, and for reasons too numerous to mention, did not make it here tonight, but each of these will receive their checks. Our heartfelt thanks, and you'll hear more from us next year. So I want to thank all of you, and I want to thank our grant recipients for coming this evening, and for my great committee who's made everything very, very possible. Thank you very much. And with that announcement, we're going to keep moving right along in a crisp fashion, as promised. And I'm going to introduce Jill Gage, who is so famous, I need to say no more. And she's going to introduce our speaker, Jessica Spring. So, Jill, without further ado, take it away.
I always love coming to the event every year where we meet our grant winners. I am the curator of the History of Printing collection at the Newberry Library. I do collect artist books, so I would love for you grant winners if you come see me when your books are finished, especially if they're about rats. But also if they're not about rats, I'd be happy to talk to you. It is also my great pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening. And I feel like I have an easy job because literally everybody knows Jessica Spring. And in fact, over the past week, when I've been saying to people, oh, I'm introducing Jessica Spring, they're all like, oh, I know Jessica, tell her I said hi. And random people I never met would email me and they'd say, I know Jessica Spring. So despite the fact that she now lives in Tacoma, I think of her as the most Chicago of printers, or at least number 2 behind Jen Farrell. And I'll say, you got to get up pretty early in the morning to beat Jen Farrell as a Chicago printer. It's a fast race. And as proof that Jessica is the most Chicago of printers, when she came to the Newberry yesterday, she handed me 2 little gifts. One was a little printed mini broadside featuring a quote in Cooper Black. And it's a quote from Mayor Brandon Johnson. And Jessica has asked me to tell you that she has these on the back table for people to take away. So they're really wonderful. And it's always really fascinating to see any kind of quote in Cooper Black because it makes it just a tiny bit better, I think. So, and these I will also say have ornaments from Jen Farrell. So the most Chicago. She also handed me a little piece about Daniel Burnham. So very Chicago. So Jessica began her interest in typesetting and printing as a photo typesetter in the 1980s, which seems impossible. Although I also remember the 80s, so it's possible and impossible. And her introduction to letterpress printing paralleled the birth of desktop publishing, an exciting time to explore graphic arts. And it's not often that you find people who start one way and go backwards, so I think that's really fascinating. After graduation, she continued typesetting, working at the last typesetting shop in Printers Row, then at the Reader. Again, the most Chicago of CVs, right? She co-founded a graphic design firm and for over a decade offered letterpress printing while also serving predominantly nonprofit clients. As her interest in book arts grew, she attended graduate school at Columbia College Center for Book and Paper Arts and founded Springtide Press in 1999. And I will also say that one of the reasons that Jessica feels so Chicago is she came out of this real community of Chicago printers and book artists that was made possible by things like Columbia Book and Paper Arts and is continued today by the Caxton Club and by people like Audrey Niffenegger and Artist Bookwork. So it's really about the person as well as the community that produced people like Jessica. By 2003, Jessica moved to Tacoma, Washington, where she taught book arts for decades at Pacific Lutheran University and continues to teach workshops around the country. A continued focus has been researching historic type composition and the invention of Daredevil furniture to help other printers set type in circles, curves, and angles, which is super exciting, and I would love to hear a whole presentation about that. She possibly is, many people outside of sort of printing in book arts world, she's best known as the co-producer of the Dead Feminist series and co-authoring Dead Feminist, Historic Heroines in Living Color. The Dead Feminist broadsides probably come out weekly at the Newberry. They're a huge fan favorite. But her projects at Springtime Press include artist books, broadsides, and ephemera, and can be found in over 100 collections, I counted, around the country and abroad. And she is held virtually in every major research institution in Chicago, including Columbia College, DePaul University, the Newberry Library, Northwestern University of Chicago. So we could have a citywide spring phenomenon festival, I think. The Newberry, her books are truly some of the favorites of me and the other staff at the Newberry, and they come out all the time. They're all different. They're virtuoso printing projects, but also they really engage the reader in different ways. Memory Lane, for example, focuses on retention and loss of memory, and the book structure must be built by the reader. Honeybee Hive, also I will say our photographer feels these are the hardest books she's ever had to photograph. I've made that joke before. They all have to be manipulated. Honeybee Hive is a specimen of bees. They're also clever and fun. She also has done Parts Unknown? That's a collaboration with the photographer, like a photographer, and you found this stuff in your house. Okay, well, you're going to hear about all of this. And then my most recent purchase is Horsepower, and I sometimes which is about horses, but I wake up in the night lamenting that I don't have the actual horse. Like, it's one of those things where I think, oh, if only. And so her work is such a delight. I think it's been wonderful to get to know her over the years via email and now in person and through her work. And so it's such a treat for me to introduce our speaker tonight, Jessica Spring.
I think Jill covered everything beautifully, so thank you. I want to say many thanks to the Caxton Club for inviting me to share some stories tonight with all of you. I'm not going to lie, it's very intimidating to be here, but when Jackie asked me, I felt like it was a great opportunity to really thank Chicago folks who changed the course of my life and continue to keep me strong. Jen Farrell once said to me that you can take the girl out of Chicago, but you can't take Chicago out of the girl. And she's absolutely right. The other enticement, besides a trip to Chicago, is sharing some thoughts with the Book Arts grantees who are being awarded tonight, who have their awards. With more than 60 years of evidence, I know hindsight illuminates those moments in life that might seem random, haphazard, even spooky. And I encourage you all to pay attention, to peek around the corner, to take risks, and see what the universe offers up. Stay alert for waking dreams. So first of all, forgive my chronology. I'm going to do a quick definition of letterpress printing as if y'all need it, but I'm just going to do it because I'm a teacher. So you could use metal type, wood type, linoleum, clock parts, mounted type high. You ink that surface and you have paper meet the ink surface. So there you are. And we're going to talk more about letterpress printing, of course, because that is what I am in the heart of all things, a letterpress printer. So as Jill mentioned, I was an English major at Macalester College, and I wrote for the student newspaper. And what I realized is we worked our butts off doing that kind of work, and that there's a back room where the people were typesetting and getting paid for it. And I'm like, wait a minute. And they worked on these huge consoles. You could only use 4 typefaces at a time, and that included bold and italic. And you worked on a tiny green screen, and it was HTML coding, essentially, like it is now. So you had to code it all in. And the important thing is you had to imagine when you were typesetting what was going to come out of that machine, right? And that's a beautiful way to learn about letterpress printing, really. The other great thing about this opportunity to be a photo typesetter in college was while everybody else is using an electric typewriter, I am doing my term papers on the photo typesetting equipment. And I can add extra lines, I can add extra space, I can make my type a little bit bigger and meet the page minimums with no professors being the wiser. So I thought it was pretty cool. My first job out of college was as an editor out in lovely Deerfield, Illinois. And that commute about killed me. But I did some editing that was super boring, but I also did some keylining, and I worked on the first Mac that I had ever met out there. They had just gotten one, and I was like, this is kind of cool. And the job I remember doing there was for Let Them Eat Cake. You guys remember that place? And I remember rendering the Pac-Man logo on the Macintosh, and I thought I was the coolest thing around. But the commute about killed me, like I said. So I got a job at a place called Word City on Printers Row. And the job I remember doing there, many jobs, but we worked with White Walls magazine and did this wild, like avant-garde typesetting. And it was such a great experience. Again, imagining what something would look like without having WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, which all you youngsters get to have now. So the other thing that happened at Word City was I met a lovely human, Susie Signorino, and we were typesetters together there. And Susie's the daughter of Slug Signorino, and she tipped me off about a job at the Reader. And I was like, this sounds pretty cool. And I had an interview with this fellow, Bob McCammett, and he hired me despite all of these Reader bosses going to Carleton, and I went to Macalester. If you know, you know. But he still hired me, and we worked our butts off, like 40 hours a week, but in 3 days, right, Catherine? And it was so exciting. And I was like, these are my people. Finally, I am not an editor, duh. And one exciting thing was to be able to get to do a feature design. And there was always kind of a fight between production and editorial over space, right? Production wanted big white space and editorial wanted more words. So you had to really be lucky to get to use a lot of white space in the feature spread. So this is one that I found in my archives that was from 1988. I should get rid of some old things, huh? But it was so cool because it's a Slug illustration. So I thought y'all would appreciate that. So while I was only at the Reader for 3 years, the mark was indelible. The cool thing about the Reader was they would let you do freelance on those other 2 days a week, which was very generous, and it let me kind of start a design firm. And with a partner who was a SAIC grad, we started this business. And she worked with Kathy Ruge Saunders at School of the Art Institute. And Kathy said, hey, we have a Vandercook. If y'all want it, you move it, you can have it. And we're like, yes, please, thank you. So we did it, and it became part of the business at that time. And we did self-promotions, wedding invitations, that kind of thing. But every year we did a Valentine. And this lovely shrimp one was Martha Chipless's work. And Martha worked with us on occasion. The other thing I did at this time was start to take classes at the Newberry, at Columbia College, and also going to Oxbow for a week to learn bookbinding. And I met my lovely friend, Susan Estelle Quaz, who's here tonight from Milwaukee. And we continue to collaborate over the years. This is a project that we did for Children's Press, a Grolier imprint. And Susan did the illustrations, I designed the books, and she did these great icons that made the whole series really sing. We also collaborated on a book called The Girl in the Moon, and it was our version of The Man in the Moon. Like, why shouldn't it be a girl, right? And it's about all the crazy things that happen during a full moon. And I do want you to note and appreciate the typeface I used. It's called Artcraft, and it has fantastic 00 ligatures designed by Robert Wiepking. And that's the right choice for a book that has the word moon in it, right? Am I right? It also glows in the dark. I'm just saying. So please note that if you do attempt to print with glow-in-the-dark ink, you will awake in the middle of the night, your little cuticles glowing, a reminder of the day's printing. So as our design business grew, my interest in digital design shrank. And my son, Jack, his birth called for a more flexible schedule, and I started Springtide Press in 1999. And I also decided to leave the business so that I could pursue an MFA at Columbia College. And we had amazing faculty there. And it was, again, another place where I went and I was like, oh, these really are my people. And one of the first projects that I really remember doing there was this editioned book that is based on a medieval structure. So sewn on cords, covered in Brazil wood dyed chamois. Chamois, like chamois you clean your car, chamois. And my particular favorite part, I love doing varied editions. So every book in the series had a different cigarette card dropped in. And the illustrations I found from a plate at the Kane County Flea Market. And they're from probably the 1940s. And your mission, if you had this textbook, was to fill in the blank under the illustration. So I used the illustrations and then put in my own proverbs. The other very memorable class for me was additions, taught by Audrey Niffenegger. And in the course of a year, so 2 semesters, we had to come up with concept, paper making, printing, binding, and edition this book, right? So Audrey did not discourage ambitious projects, which was a good thing. And I decided, as I was growing with this interest in collecting, getting more type, getting presses, like why are they so obsessed with collecting? So I interviewed 15 different collectors, and they had some weird objects they collected: handcuffs, hangers, glass floats, prosthetics. And so each person I interviewed, they had to give me one object from their collection. And then that object would be in the box. So there's 15 different boxes, 15 different objects. Again, another varied edition. And I also created trading cards. So, like baseball cards, the facts about every collector. And they were duotones printed on my handmade paper. And it included an essay by Annie Morse and some illustrations by Susan Quaz of animals and their collecting habits. So we lost the quote here, but the box that I decided to keep, because you always have to keep one of your edition, was a giant beetle from Ulrich Donkers. And going and seeing his library and his beetles was incredibly memorable for me, and I'm glad I got to keep a beetle. So the other thing that happened in this editions class was Columbia planned that we would have a book fair that people would exhibit at, and so it was a great chance to meet Vamp and Tramp, who sold my work for many, many, many years, and Bob McCammett came and bought a copy of the edition, and he chose the Calculator Collector, which I thought was like right on point, right? And that's now in Jill's care at the Newberry. So I want to remind you about that waking dream right? And the importance of support from mentors and like confirmation that this crazy path you're on, there's something to it. You should keep going. And that's really important as you're working through life, whether you're an old fart or a young fart, pay attention to those waking dreams. The other project I did at Columbia for my graduate thesis was called Spiceography. And this book compares spice and type as precious commodities traded across cultures. And what I love about making artist books is I'll see these weird connections maybe that wouldn't occur to everybody, but if you can make a book and explain it in an engaging way, I think people are like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. You're kind of weird, but that is awesome. So I made broadsides that all had whatever spice it was in each in the handmade paper. And the Spice House was so great. They gave me all these spices and I used it. And so the display of the work smelled beautifully. When I made the paper, it was very fragrant. But it really is a book about the notion of taste, right? So if you are cooking, you're looking for a spice that is going to give a particular flavor. As a graphic designer, you are looking for a typeface and a look that's going to give something a flavor. So that notion of taste, right? We can have bad taste or good taste. That informed this book. And so it kind of all made sense to me. So each spice was paired with a different typeface. So that book lives at Northwestern. I just ended up, I think, with 8 boxed editions. And thanks to Russell Malone, who purchased it, and Scott Kraft, who takes care of it, it's here in the Chicago area, at least. The other great joy of grad school, and continues to be a great joy, is type collecting, of course, and then research. So Chicago is a great place to dive into that with great names like Frederick Gowdy, W.A. Dwiggins, Oswald Cooper, Will Ransom. These were amazing names that had great stories behind all of them. And Will Ransom in particular interested me. His nickname when he came to Chicago in 1903 was the Man from Snohomish. So you're going to remember that, right? And if you don't know, Snohomish is in Washington State. So Gowdy and Will Ransom started the Village Press together in Park Ridge, Illinois. And Ransom was responsible for designing this typeface, Parsons. It had extra long ascenders and descenders, and they're very quirky and lovely. And of course, they were overused, and printers would use so many, it looked ridiculous. And so Ransom begged the foundry to issue a warning. Good taste dictates that these decorative characters be used very sparingly. As a general rule, not more than 1 in any line. Did they listen? No. And it kind of broke him, I think, a little bit. He didn't design much type after that at all. So, but that just made me love him more, so much. So at the Newberry, there's Ransom's diaries and his very early books. And I learned this term from Paul Gale, juvenilia. And it describes an artist's early works. And you are indeed enduring mine tonight. So thank you for that. And this is my love note to Will Ransom. And it shows off the Parsons I had collected while living in Chicago, along with some special decorators designed to go with the typeface. And the colors were inspired by a Parsons type specimen that I saw at the Newberry. It does not include any Parsons Italics. That has been my unicorn. I do have some now, but I did not at that time. So, with apologies, we're going to fast forward more than a decade. I'm living in Tacoma. My mom has died. I drove to California to collect a lawyer's bookcase that she left for me, and I'm unloading it. And it's full of dusty old novels from James's Clavell and Mishner. And I reach in to find 2 fragile books. All these years, my mother had Will Ransom's first and second private press books. With my great-grandparents' book plate, also did not know my great-grandfather's name was Will, like Will Ransom. And there were just 100 copies of this book produced. So just think about that. Produced in Snohomish in 1901, Snohomish, Washington. So back we go to Chicago, but please remember Will Ransom and appreciate this waking dream. So we're in Chicago. My son Jack is in kindergarten, and my husband gets a job offer in Tacoma, a place we know nothing about, and we decide to take the risk. And the studio move, well, we have to move our house, and they're going to pay for that, but the studio move is in question. And so my husband's like, hey, my wife's an artist. She's got a little studio. And I think they thought maybe I did watercolors or something. So they covered the whole move, which was amazing. So Jack, while he was in kindergarten, did this little invitation for our going away party, and we exchange Sammy Sosa for Ichiro, and we leave after games of hide and seek, kickball, and of course, kissy. So it's 2004, and we've moved to Tacoma, and it is really beautiful, and I love the mountain. I drew this. I luckily have collaborated with many talented illustrators and will continue to, and not so much myself. But what I love about Tacoma too is we're right there near Puget Sound, the Salish Sea, and it's beautiful. And now my press name makes a lot more sense, Spring Tide Press. So this is the shop, and it's 10 steps from the back door to the shop. And this is a huge deal because Chicago, I shared studio spaces all over the city with many different folks. And so now I have this easy commute, and it's 10 minutes to the Sound. So Seattle sees Tacoma, I think, kind of like Chicago sees Gary. Big chip on the shoulder, which I have adopted. And, Tacoma's like, we just want to be liked. So this is a 1909 sign from the Alaska Yukon Exposition with a display of electric lights. And I did my own version, and it's become very popular with Tacoma folks, which is very sweet. And after 10 years, I was like, there's some better 4-letter words for my fair city. So I upgraded to love. And during the pandemic, I printed heal. And so this was an installation that referenced the original 1909 sign. And I installed it in fencing. And so people could come and take a print, and then they had to leave behind their wishes for the city to heal. I taught at Pacific Lutheran University, which we mentioned, and in my 16 years there, I helped facilitate the donation of the Thornley collection. Incredible, not very well-known collection of 19th century type presses and equipment. And my favorite project that I assigned to students over my years there was to work with this incredible antique type. And it's risky. Some people could say, don't let the students touch it. But we did. We worked with it, and they would create type specimens every semester. And by the time I left, there was hundreds of them, and I'm really proud of leaving that legacy. After I retired, one of my former students is now teaching in the program. And I'm just going to tell you, I kid you not, she is from Snohomish, Washington. I can't make this stuff up. So Parts Unknown came out of cleaning out our attic. It was full of shredded paper insulation, and we discovered when we cleaned it out that there's a wooden box with over 200 glass negatives. The house is circa 1890, and so these glass negatives are kind of incredible. They show Tacoma, but they also show Hawaii, San Francisco, Boston, Niagara Falls, and it shows that at that time, at 1890, very new technology of the time where you could take a glass negative, coat it with emulsion, and essentially have a snapshot, where before it was these stiff, long poses. So now people could take the glass and go and travel and capture images. So the book is about a city at a crossroads. It's not a pioneer town anymore, and it's got a growing leisure class. And the title references the area in historic maps above California. So Oregon and Washington were just parts unknown. And it also acknowledges in the title my efforts to settle in this new frontier. Know that by 1910, Washington state's population more than doubles, women finally have the vote, and a Chicago newspaper man reports, for some reason that is not easy to explain, the West Coast has always had a strange attraction for people of a romantic and unpractical turn of mind. I am here in this region map makers call Parts Unknown. It is a gentle place in many ways, beautiful to look at and easy to laugh with, unlike the slicker city to the north, and not like the broad-shouldered city I left, where living is much harder. We are surrounded by water, shadowed by our mountain. I am here, amazed at the open heart of this place. The ghosts in my house have revealed themselves here now, despite more than 100 years of chances before. Did they know I'm a bookmaker obsessed with photographs of strangers? My studio is filled with machinery from their time, letters and ornaments as embellished as their clothing. I cannot credit this story to coincidence, to happenstance. You are here in Parts Unknown. You are at a crossroads, looking at the past. Now this is our present. Whose ghosts will we become? One of the most amazing photos found in that box was of the newly built 6-story Luzon building, designed by Daniel Burnham and John Root. Despite being the only historic skyscraper still standing west of the Mississippi, and despite public outcry, Tacoma tore down the Luzon in 2009. This is an origami tribute to Burnham, who I appreciate, even if Tacoma didn't. So this shows the lockup of the interior of that Burnham piece, using triangles to allow the text to meander. So getting away from horizontal, even vertical typesetting. And I became very interested in this. And one of my first trials was taking type and belting it with a plumbing clamp around the type and electrical tape on the interior. And then I took foam core and locked it up in a chase, and I was able to print type in a circle. And I'm like, this is cool, but it's tough. So with help from my youngest sister and laser cutting wood, we figured out that you could slice plastic tubing, and with 2 plastic rings, type could set in a circle, just 18-point type. And so I kind of came up with a kit, and I called it Daredevil Furniture, and people call it Daredevil Typesetting now, which is kind of fun that it's got a name. And I show this example because it's from the glorious era of artistic printing. And I took it at South Street Seaport in New York, and it shows here a composing stick using circular quads and brass circles to set the type in a ring. And you get to see both the composition and the finished print, and it's glorious. And when I teach students Daredevil typesetting, I remind them that you always need to kind of work towards the rectangle to get everything solid. And that's the way to do it. It's that tricky, or not. So I designed a second set of furniture, and this is the dumbed down circular quads. And what it allows you to do is set multiple layers of curved type, kind of a curvy type sandwich. And this is a tribute to type historian Beatrice Ward and her crystal goblet. There's a third set of Daredevil furniture, and it's intended for large cylinder presses, and it can be used for wood type as well. And it was handy for this print I created after the fall of Roe. Print therapy is real. So when I designed the first set of furniture back in 2015, I made an anxious visit to show it to Jen Farrell to get her input, and was very much encouraged to proceed. And she's used it in ways I never, ever, ever, ever imagined. And she has helped promote my shenanigans. She continues to inspire me, and obviously all of y'all, to work a little harder like they do in Chicago. So you can see collaboration is a consistent through line, either with other artists or as a teacher. And Chandler O'Leary moved to Tacoma before the 2008 election. And I pretty soon figured out she was a talented illustrator, and there was an election going on, Obama, and then that gal, Sarah Palin, you remember her? And she had these ridiculous eyeglasses that people couldn't stop talking about. And I found this quote, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, come, my conservative friend, wipe the dew off your spectacles and see the world is moving. So I asked Chandler to draw some Sarah Palin glasses, and she drew the whole damn quote. Like, she drew the shit out of it. Look at that. And she hand lettered everything. And from that point on, we launched the Dead Feminist series. So they're broadsides, printed as democratic multiples, editioned, and we really wanted people to embrace the term feminist, right? At that time, people didn't really want to call themselves feminists. So the rules of the game with the series, we would take a social justice issue, we'd pair it with a quote from a woman who obviously had to be deceased, and Chandler did this incredible hand lettering, and with increasingly complex colors, registration, and it was my job to make it happen on press. And with the early support of people, mostly women, who supported this series, we even had subscribers like Margaret McCammett. And Margaret made this very cool custom picture box or picture frame so she could keep all of her prints in it and then display the one that she wanted to see at a particular time. But those folks who embrace you early on. It's very meaningful. Again, it's like we're on the right path, and it means a lot. So by 2016, Sasquatch Books offered us a book deal, and we scored an introduction by historian Jill Lepore, and it came out right after Trump's first election. Wah, wah. But it became a primer for how to get through a really difficult time. This is the last print we did in 2022, and it profiles Frances Perkins. And she was FDR's labor secretary and the first woman appointed to a presidential cabinet. She is responsible for the alphabet soup of social programs that are being decimated right now. And she was a perfect woman to profile and is just not well enough known. So over 14 years, we produced 33 broadsides. And Chandler's sudden death in 2023 was another unexpected turn in my life. Sorry, but she inspires me every day to know the power and the potential of putting ink on paper. So, on the topic of ink on paper, let's return to our old friend, the man from Snohomish, Will Ransom. During the pandemic, I decided to catalog all the type in my collection, and I set just one line of type each day. I started January 1st, 2021, and of course I had to use Parsons with the extra long ascenders and descenders. Probably not a good idea for a type specimen book, which should be alphabetical, but we got that straightened out. And starting on January 1st, by day 6, our nation's capital was attacked. There are political protests, environmental catastrophes, continuing pandemic. And I kept setting the type. Every typeface in the shop, every size was set, and I continued for 461 days. Anything too large or overlooked or newly purchased was used to set monthly chapter opening pages and surrounded by borders from the collection. If I was out of sorts, didn't have enough letters, I would make up words like sweary, or I used monogram initials for airport codes. An extra chapter featured initials and monograms highlighted with several two-color specimens. And critical to the process is Gabby Cooksey. She's been working in my studio for 10 years now, and she's an incredible bookbinder, but now also printer and book artist. So the printing took place over more than a month, and the binding is actually still going on. And you can see Parsons was used for the running footer on each spread and for the cover as well. And the binding was adapted by Gabby using Andrea Peterson's super strong handmade paper. And I did bring a copy in the back if you'd like it to take a look at the book. And one last book to share. This is a reminder to notice and value the smallest things. It's a collaboration with Yoshi Nakagawa, and skoshi means a tiny bit, and the term was borrowed by U.S. soldiers and shortened to skosh. So Yoshi's line of cuts are paired with Japanese proverbs, and the back features all different, a varied edition again, all different Chiagami papers, some that I saved for years from Aiko's paper on Clark Street. So what am I doing now? Well, I've got wood type in my collection too. So I've started with the new administration to create a monthly protest poster, but also a wood type specimen book. And I have quite a bit of wood type, and there's a lot to protest. So I will be continuing with that operation. So, though I've been gone for more than 2 decades, Chicago and the people here have left a deep impression on me and the work that I do. I think about this amazing city often. Oh my gosh. And my heart is with you all. Thanks for listening and stay strong.
Thank you so much, Jessica. We have a tradition here. Everybody who came, as they came in, signed this book that we're going to give to you as a gift. So thank you again.